Welcome back to Cowes for the final inshore racing day for the crews on board the 5 GC32s here in the Isle of Wight. Topping the leaderboard heading into the last day was Sultanate of Oman. Would they successfully manage to hold on to their narrow 1-point lead and lift the Bullitt Cowes Cup? Racing this week has been neck and neck with the smallest of margins between winning and losing. The start has been crucial, with crews fighting for their preferred end of the line whilst trying to maintain boat speed.
The races are so short, so if you have a bad start, you really don't have much time to repair the situation, and so it's important to have a good start.
Although starts are crucial, especially in lighter winds, in today's weather it was more about boat handling. With gusts reaching up to 20 knots bearing away, it was really demanding on the sailors. Full foiling conditions saw the boats reach maximum speeds, making mark roundings all the more challenging. Relishing the conditions, Armin Strom's sailing team were determined from the start to overhaul leaders Sultanate of Oman. They took the Bullitt on the opening race, and with confidence high they went on to win 3 of the final 4 races. The battle for third place came down to the final race, with Alinghi getting a narrow victory over rivals Team NG. The series leaders Sultanate of Oman managed to take 1 bullet, but there was no doubt who the winners were, with the Swiss team dominating the day.
Well, we have a few more days in such conditions. We sailed in Miami and Key West this winter, and it's between 10 and 15 knots, and I just practice a bit more than probably the other teams, and feel more confident to go with the kite and take a more risk.
With the inshore results deciding the Cowes Cup, the teams on Saturday will race the historic Round the Island race organised by the Island Sailing Club. 12 months ago, a GC32 took line honours in the race that was first run back in 1931. Perfect conditions are forecast for this year, so can the overall record be broken? Stay with us to find out.
Yeah, we're in June this month, and we're trying to sail most days because this is the time we'll be sailing in 2 years' time. The America's Cup will be in June, and to tell you the truth, we've had all sorts of conditions.
The first half of June has been very light. The second half's been incredible. Beautiful breeze, 15 knots. Today we had up to 20 knots at times, so just fantastic racing.
It's great. In San Francisco we had one condition we had to learn, it was always fresh breeze. Here we have to learn how to mode the boats in lighter breeze, medium breeze, strong breeze. It's a real challenge. We're used to having permanent power when we were sailing in San Francisco, and there's times here when we have to look for it, and really challenging venue, but we love it.
When I go flying, I don't normally dress up like this. But to be honest, when I go flying, I don't normally fly like this. Fancy a spot of foiling? I bet you do. And you wouldn't be alone. But until now, to do so meant mastering an international moth or getting into an America's Cup team. Neither is that easy. But the Formula Whisper could change all of that. Designed by university lecturer Ron Price, this 20-foot cat is designed to appeal to anyone who can sail and fancies a taste of foiling. She's an all-carbon fibre construction that weighs just 78 kilos all up. She's not the first production foiling cat, but it is her innovative design that means this could mean foiling for all. How come the professionals always make it look so easy? I mean, at the boat show it was, come foiling. It's straightforward, it's very simple. Maybe it's not quite that simple, but it is really good fun. And what a machine. The fact that it's got these twin foils like moths make it very, very different to a conventional foiling cat. Why can't I do it like that? I'm going to have another go. I am. I'm cross now. Yeah. Look at this. This is exactly what this boat's all about. With its T-foil hydrofoils, it's a lot more stable in many ways. You set the ride height and basically just sail to that. And when you've got people on board who know what they're doing, it looks very simple. Even if they do drop it off occasionally. It'll come back. There we go, back up on the foils. Now, looking across at that boat, you look at the little wands coming out the back of the dagger board. That's what's controlling the ride height and making sure that the boat tries to stay at the same height above the water. You can see them really clearly now. Look at that, cracking. Now tell me you don't want to have a go. Well, aside from the fact that this is a foiling machine, let's have a look at some of the components that make this really quite a special boat. The first thing that strikes you is just how narrow these bows are at the front. They're really, really sort of, I mean, they look like international moth bows in some ways. They're that slim. But beyond that, the next thing that strikes you is that this boat is actually made of two key component parts. Basically, the deck, which includes all of the deck, and the hull, which includes all of the hull. And the two are stuck together. And you can see indications of this. There's a seam that runs here. Now on the production models you won't be able to see this, but this is the very first one. And this is where the join happens. It's where the two things come together. And we'll see why that's so important when we get further back in the boat. So as we move further back here, this is of course the action end of it, the foils. This is what we're really talking about. Now the significant difference about this boat compared to a lot of foiling multi-hulls that you see is that this is a T-foil. This is very much like a moth, an international moth system with a dagger board and a foil and basically an elevator on the back of this foil that is operated by a wand that as the boat rides up changes the angle of attack of this elevator on the back. And that's what controls the ride height of the boat. And of course this boat, being a cat, has got two of them, and that's what makes it so different to a lot of the C-section and L-section foils that we see on other foiling cats. Now, as far as the detail is concerned, in order you can also change the angle of attack of this foil with a worm drive here, which is just driven on a pulley system in there, very straightforward. Just pull the rope one way or the other and it changes the angle of attack of the foil. Moving further back, talking about the hull and the deck being two separate components, we see that very clearly here. This is one of the big advantages of this build system, is that there is no conventional beam that goes across the back and is bolted in on each side. That way of doing things, the conventional way of doing things, is actually quite heavy because you need structure in the hull to transfer the loads. This is really clever because this is part of the deck moulding. It's splayed out here, which spreads the load. It also means that the boat is very, very stiff in this plane. It just doesn't do that. And that is very important indeed, because if you've got foils, the last thing you want is the hulls to be changing their angle of attack. So not only is this a clever part of the design, it's an essential part of the design, and on top of that, it also accounts for this boat being incredibly light, all up 78 kilos. That's about the same weight as an A-class cat. I mean, a Tornado or something is 150. It's a very, very light boat. Then the final element in the overall jigsaw puzzle is the T-foil on the rudder. Very, very straightforward. You pull a pin out, you drop the rudder down, you pin it in. That's it, end of story. There's no change, or there's no angle change on these foils. They just go straight down. And I guess the key thing about the whole boat ultimately is that you can launch it on and off the beach, because you just pull these foils up and slide it in. It really is no more difficult to operate or to launch and to recover than a normal cat. But it's a very, very different boat when you get out on the water. One of the things that's really interesting about this boat when you're sailing it is that you're not actually that aware of it being up on the foils. The helm does change a bit, and it does go a lot lighter, and it's a little bit twitchier, but it's not as dramatic as it looks from off the boat. And it is quite a smooth transition from sliding through the water as you'd expect a cat to do, and lifting up on the foils. It's an extraordinary experience. I can really see why so many people get so hooked on it. Well, I'll be honest, I found it quite tricky at times, but it's a strange feeling on board this boat, because in some ways the things that I found trickiest were actually the simplest things to do in theory. I'm not that used to sailing dinghy cats, and trapezing a dinghy cat I found quite tricky. But the thing that you'd expect to be difficult, which is the feel as when you come out on the foils, actually isn't at all. In fact, the weird thing is you hardly notice it when you come off on the foils. It's only when you suddenly realise that you're way above the water that your mind starts to freak out a little bit. But having said that, a few of us had a go on the boat today, and it was very clear that those with multi-hull experience got on with it straight away. So I think it's a great little boat. I just think I've got to go away and practice a bit more. Oh well. Unless you sail an international moth, the chances are that most people haven't actually been on a foiling boat. They're the domain of professional sailors. But this boat changes all of that. This boat is specifically aimed at club sailing. And here we are at Western Sailing Club in Southampton waters, surrounded by club sailors. And sure, she's the centre of attention here, but I wouldn't be at all surprised if this becomes the norm in a few years' time.
Welcome to the fourth day of the Bullitt GC32 Racing Tour of Cows, and today the teams were facing quite a different prospect with the famous Round the Island race on today's agenda. It was an early start with the 4 GC32 boats leaving the dock at dawn for the 50 nautical mile race around the Isle of Wight.
It's great because it's a lot of history here. It's very a lot of traditional boats, yet there's some moderns in there, and some multi-hulls and some bigger boats. And being a little 32-footer is pretty scary when you're around some of the 100-foot big traditional sailing yachts. And I think it'll be a fantastic race with the 5 boats in our class. The one thing that's going to be hard to predict is how rough the sea state will be out the south end of the island.
This year, over 1,500 boats took part in the annual event. First run in 1931, it has since then become one of the great sporting institutions in Britain. The boats range from the multi-hull speed machines to your weekend cruisers who aim to make it round the island before the tides turn against them.
I was praying to the Lord for some fun.
The GC32 fleet were on the second start, and the race began with a slow upwind leg to the iconic Needles. With almost perfect conditions, the fleet were on target to beat the race record set by Ben Ainsley's AC-45 catamaran 2 years ago. Team NG were first to round the famous rocks, followed by Alinghi. The rough seas in the south side of the island really tested the teams and put any record attempts out of the window. Sultanate of Oman overhauled the fleet and crossed the line 1 minute ahead of Alinghi in 3 hours and 50 minutes. Team NG took third place with Team Argo 32 in fourth, with less than 6 minutes separating the 4 boats. It was a very different race to the light winds of last year, where Paul Campbell-James took line honours. Replacing the injured Lee McMillan on Sultanate of Oman this year, he enjoyed the speed and challenges of the race.
Yeah, it was a very different race to last year. Last year we drifted round, barely foiled, and it took us 9 hours. And this time it was, especially on the backside of the island, was windy, wavy, really full on, and it took us half the time. So yeah, it was wicked fun today.
The closing ceremony saw the winners from the Inshore races receive their prizes on the podium. It's been a successful event in Cowes, wind, sun and lots of action. And with the top of the overall leaderboard as tight as it can be, the Bullitt GC32 Racing Tour moves to Kiel in Germany at the end of July. We'll see you then.